The anime kicks off with a young boy named Lloyd getting magic lessons in the 4 basic elements from his tough-as-nails teacher. She starts with fire and gives him a clear ultimatum: master it or skip dinner. That's one way to light a fire under someone. Motivated by hunger and fear, Lloyd trains hard. After many attempts, he proudly shows off a little flame to his teacher. She's mildly impressed until she snuffs it out and conjures up a huge blaze of her own. "Nice try," she says, "but this is just the beginning." Next day, water training. Lloyd tries to copy her water drawing technique, but fails miserably. With a better explanation and a live demo, he tries again, and this time nails it. He's feeling pretty good until she dumps a torrent of water on him. "Now that's real water," she says, grinning. Then comes wind. Lloyd shows he can use it, kind of. His teacher casually blasts him off his feet with a gust strong enough to launch a kite. Still room to grow, clearly. Later, in the forest, Lloyd makes an ice sculpture of his teacher, because why not? She finds it and smashes it after enlarging it and using Lloyd as part of the performance. He ends up buried in ice, muttering about how he still lacks real strength. Back home, his teacher falls seriously ill. Lloyd, ever caring, heals her with magic. She hugs him with gratitude, then promptly says, "Cool, back to training." One evening, she's reading a spellbook and looking unusually somber. When Lloyd enters to say dinner's ready, the book drops. The moment he picks it up, something weird happens. He faints instantly. The teacher is shocked and realizes he may be chosen. Later, while he's asleep and feverish, she leaves a healing mark on his forehead and vows not to let him repeat her mistakes. The mark disappears shortly after. Next, they return to the forest where Lloyd tries healing magic on a fruit, and it grows rapidly. Pretty cool. But his teacher shows off by healing the entire tree and casually eating a fruit before strolling off like a magic-powered boss. Lloyd is in awe. At home, she warns Lloyd that some monster people use forbidden magic to control beasts. He's curious, but she flat out refuses to teach him. It's ancient, dangerous, and should stay forgotten. Training resonates. Lloyd tries to sneakily use a hidden magic wand, but his teacher finds it and bonks him with it. Focus. She yells, unimpressed by his shortcut attempt. Later, she teaches him about magic stones, crystallized mana that can turn nearby objects into more stones. Lloyd wonders if they can be restored, but that answer's on hold for now. Finally, she blindfolds Lloyd, drags him into a forest, and says, "Here's a knife. Get home in a week." Wait, what? A monster appears immediately, and Lloyd, in full panic mode, flees and climbs a tree. He realizes white magic alone won't save him this time, and that he really needs to escape fast. Lloyd uses vision magic and realizes that the safe zone is really far away. He climbs down from the tree, hides his knife, and begins his journey. After night falls, he finds a fruit-bearing tree, magically matures a fruit, and munches on it. Then, like a budget wilderness expert, he camps in a cave and uses a basic magic circle to enhance himself slightly. The next morning, he begins climbing a mountain, only to nearly fall off it. That night, he curls up inside a tree again and casts a mana-reducing spell to conserve energy. Days pass as he roams the forest, strengthening himself and using spells. While walking, he steps on a twig, which causes a massive monster to come tumbling down. Lloyd narrowly avoids being flattened. The monster sees him and gives chase. Panicking, Lloyd activates a speed spell and runs for his life. He finally makes it home, collapses and loses consciousness. His teacher finds him and proudly welcomes him back, impressed that he completed the survival challenge. Years pass and Lloyd grows into a young man, still doing house chores. While cleaning, he finds a book about a nearby city. His teacher catches him slacking, but lets him borrow the book. Later, she drags him literally into helping her test an anti-aging spell, then tosses him back like a magic rag doll. They have lunch, but she's already brainstorming new enhancement spells. That night, she gives him a special vitality potion, which just knocks him out from exhaustion. The next morning, Lloyd is gone. His teacher finds the city book on his desk and realizes what he's done. Meanwhile, Lloyd arrives in the city, awestruck by the bustling crowds and nearly flattened by a speeding cart. The driver shouts at him, but Lloyd just marvels at city life. He buys some pastries and ends up broke. Then a flyer smacks into him, offering adventurer jobs. Perfect timing. Lloyd joins a party led by Alan. During a mission, a monster smashes through walls, shocking everyone. Alan calls for Sheena to heal the team, but Lloyd quietly casts a healing spell himself, buffing the whole squad. The team fights back, One hits the monster's eye, it retaliates, another blocks the blow. Someone restrains it, and Alan finishes it off with a mighty attack. Back in the city, the team is welcomed like heroes. At their base, Alan gives Lloyd a small payment, calling it the rank D share, and warns him not to get cocky. But Lloyd is totally chill about it. They celebrate, but Lloyd bows out because he doesn't drink. This annoys a teammate, but Alan shrugs it off, claiming white mages aren't that useful in battle anyway. Back at the teacher's house, Lloyd's observer reports to her that he's joined the adventure team hero to slay monsters. The teacher sees this as a real test for Lloyd. As long as he doesn't get arrogant, he'll be fine. The observer asks if she has any regrets, but she replies, "I won't repeat the same mistake twice." They recall the past, when the demon lord sacrificed himself to steal a magical book and nearly dragged them all into ruin. Ancient magic reversed the fate of those the demon lord had killed, but at the cost of Lloyd's life. Back in the city, a vendor is selling books about the hero team, especially Alan's monster-slaying glory. In these tales, Lloyd is only mentioned as the support guy, helping others defend until Alan could finish the fight. At Alan's house, he visits a teammate who's been studying defense magic. She admits she's noticed something odd during battles. Her blocks have felt different lately. Alan, ever cocky, says it's just his overflowing power, even though he hasn't trained in ages. Meanwhile, by the river, two city guards face a terrifying moment. A giant monster appears and kills them both, drawing ever closer to the city. Back at Alan's house, he receives word about the soldiers who were killed and is assigned the job of eliminating the monster. Confident as ever, Alan thinks it'll be a walk in the park. At the river, he casually asks if the monster is nearby. Lloyd, already prepared, reveals its location using his magic. The party enters the lair, and Alan charges in and slays the creature like it's no big deal. But before they can high-five, another monster shows up, shocking Lloyd and annoying Alan. Lloyd quickly figures out that a demon is behind this. The black jewel embedded in the demon's magic staff is crystallized mana, super rare and very dangerous. One teammate asks if the jewel is overloaded with mana, while another realizes it's being used to control monsters. Lloyd springs into action. He casts a special enhancement spell and tells Lulu to fire an arrow at the demon. She's surprised but trusts him, fires the shot, and nails it. He then asks Miaya to teleport the demon's staff to him. Miaya, slightly baffled, makes it happen. Lloyd catches the staff like a pro, impressing her and infuriating Alan, who clearly doesn't like being upstaged. Alan insists on skewering the monster, but Lloyd warns him without the magic stone's control, the monster might go berserk. Alan, being Alan, ignores the warning and charges in anyway, and almost gets squashed. Lloyd saves him by pushing him out of harm's way. Naturally, Alan gets mad again and tells him to stop interfering. Then, determined to finish it himself, Alan attacks and lands the final blow. Later at Alan's house, he vents his frustration. He tells Lloyd he's just a backliner, a white mage who isn't even healing. That's Sheena's job. He accuses him of being useless and announces that he's being kicked off the team. Lloyd, quietly hurt, asks, "Do you think I lack power?" Alan says nothing at first, but eventually tells him to just leave. So, Lloyd does. At the guild, Lloyd tries to join a new party, but their leader turns him down. They already have a white mage. Rejected again, he starts wandering around when he overhears a desperate girl begging the receptionist for help. She needs a white mage urgently by tomorrow for a diamond-class freelance mission. The receptionist tries her best, but says it's difficult. Still begging, the adventurer asks if any white mage is available. The receptionist, like a matchmaking fairy, points her to Lloyd. The girl rushes over and asks if he's a white mage. He says yes. Then she asks if he's with a party. Lloyd gives the most relatable answer ever: "I'm unemployed." Without hesitation, she grabs his hand and drags him off. This was Lloyd's soon-to-be new team, heading out on a mission to capture a group of thieves called the Mudblocks. Cross, the archer, believed they'd succeed if they followed the plan. Silica, the sorceress, reminded everyone to stay cautious. This was a grade 1 mission, after all. Yui, the leader, was confident they'd manage. Meanwhile, Clum, their current white mage, was distracted, not paying much attention at all. When the fight started, Silica launched fireballs, forcing the thieves to hide behind wooden boxes. Thinking she'd used up all her mana, the thieves tried to charge her, only to be met with Cross's arrows, wiping them out cleanly. Yui took down thief after thief, almost getting hit, but Dagus jumped in and blocked the attack. Clum finally snapped out of it and strengthened Dagus with magic, allowing him to toss the thief aside like garbage. With the thieves defeated, their leader, hiding nearby, started sweating. He thought of escaping, but the adventurers cornered him. Yui told him to surrender quietly. The leader asked who they were but froze when he saw the badge on Yui's necklace. She proudly declared them S-rank adventurers. Panicking, the thief leader grabbed his staff embedded with a magic stone and summoned a massive stone golem. The team was stunned. Silica predicted their magic wouldn't be very effective against its rocky body. Cross-doughted arrows would help either. The thief leader laughed and ordered the golem to attack. But Yui stepped up, declaring she'd handle it. She struck the golem, but it did nothing. The golem swung back, and she barely dodged. She asked Clum to cast a body-strengthening spell on her. At first, Clum was still zoned out, but after a repeat request, she obliged. Empowered, Yui struck again, this time smashing the golem to pieces. After tying up the thieves, Clum apologized to Yui for her distractions. But Yui wasn't angry. She knew Clum was worried about her younger sister, which explained her recent absences. Later at the guild, Yui quickly found a replacement white mage, Lloyd, and brought him to the team HQ. Silica was surprised she returned so fast. Cross joked she probably didn't find anyone, but Yui proudly introduced Lloyd. Dagus was skeptical and asked where the new mage was. Yui pointed to Lloyd and introduced him, but he hadn't agreed to join yet. Silica saw that coming, and Dagus grumbled that she probably didn't explain everything to him. Cross worried they'd have to cancel the next mission, since they couldn't do it without Clum. Dagus doubted Lloyd could fill Clum's shoes. Silica sympathized, but Yui was visibly upset, asking what would happen to their client if they backed out. Lloyd suggested passing the mission to another team, but Silica explained that this wasn't a rank mission, only teams of rank A or higher could accept it. Dagus reminded them that all other high-rank teams were busy, and since they were S-rank, it was up to them. Lloyd was stunned. He didn't realize they were S-rank, the highest adventurer rank. Cross added that adventurers can only work with registered teammates, so borrowing someone else wasn't an option. Lloyd wanted to help but remembered Alan's harsh words calling him useless, making him hesitate. However, Yui believed in him. They all went to the forest where Yui asked Lloyd to demonstrate his magic so they could judge his abilities. Nervous, Lloyd feared he'd disappoint them like he did with his last team. Dagus sensed his hesitation and suggested Yui ask him for a specific spell instead of putting him on the spot. Agreeing, Yui asked him to cast a strengthening spell on all of them at once, which shocked Lloyd. Cross commented that even most white mages can't do that. Lloyd asked, "If I do this, does that make me officially S-rank?" Yui confirmed, but added he had to cast it on everyone simultaneously, no taking turns. Unsure, Lloyd asked for a moment. Then he pulled out his staff, which surprised Yui, and began preparing his magic circles to cast the spell on all of them. Yui asked Lloyd where he got his staff from, but instead, he pulled out a storage magic trick and asked for their opinion on the strengthening magic he just cast. The team was stunned. Dagus couldn't believe he didn't notice any signs, and Cross felt his body lighter. Then Yui tested it by striking a tree and cleanly sliced it down. Everyone stood there, jaws dropped. Lloyd casually explained that he had cast 5 spells: body strengthening, defense enhancement, magic power boost, mana consumption reduction, and resistance to negative effects. Yui was flabbergasted. You did 5 spells on everyone. But Lloyd, thinking a simple strengthening spell was too basic, assumed they wanted something extra. Realizing he might have overdone it, he apologized, thinking he wasn't worthy of being their white mage, and offered to leave. But Yui stopped him. She was shocked to hear that Lloyd was part of the heroes party, though they kicked him out for lacking power. Cross couldn't believe it. How was this guy considered weak? Silica admitted she'd never seen anyone use magic on such a scale before. But Lloyd insisted there were plenty of white mages stronger than him. He suggested they just bring back their previous mage, Clum, instead of relying on him. But Yui explained that Clum had a very sick younger sister, which had drained her both physically and mentally. They'd all noticed how tired she looked on the last mission. Silica added that Clum herself chose to leave the team, not wanting to burden them. Lloyd finally understood why they needed a replacement. Dagus joked they could go without a white mage, but that would be quite risky. Everyone grew worried about Clum and her sister. Lloyd asked asked about her sister's illness. Yui explained vaguely, but mentioned that the disease turns the body into a magic stone. That rang a bell for Lloyd, recalling his teacher's lessons. He asked Yui to guide him to Clum's house. When they visited, Clum was surprised. Lloyd asked directly about her sister's condition, so Clum showed him. When she opened the room, a foul mana stench filled the air. Lying there was Sylvie, her sister, visibly turning into a magic stone. Clum said the mana was spiraling out of control, and it was only a matter of time before the transformation completed. But Lloyd had a theory. He asked if the injury happened in a cave with high mana density. Clum confirmed it was during a mission to retrieve a magic stone. Lloyd inspected Sylvie's wound and concluded that mana had seeped in from that exact spot. Clum, skeptical, asked how he knew this, and he humbly credited his ideal teacher. Then Clum asked if she could trust Lloyd. He got to work using a magic circle and a reverse mana transfer spell to absorb the wild mana from Sylvie, though it made him visibly tired. Clum was shocked to see him reshaping a spell on the fly. He explained that he needed to suppress the mana to near zero, or any treatment would be pointless. He combined spells cleverly, albeit with poor mana efficiency, allowing him to burn off the excess mana while healing. Both Yui and Clum were amazed. Yui was especially stunned to see Sylvie's limbs recovering. Eventually, Lloyd succeeded in fully healing her, and Sylvie woke up, calling for her sister. Clum burst into tears of relief and gratitude. She thanked Lloyd, saying once Sylvie fully recovered, she might adventure again. Yui thought that was for the best. Clum promised to treat them to their next meal, and Yui and Lloyd said their goodbyes. But before Lloyd left, Clum told him she was sure the team would be safe with him, and asked him to take care of them, even though he wasn't officially on the team yet. Later at the tavern, the team celebrated. Dagus praised Lloyd for healing Sylvie. Yui teased Lloyd for being so humble despite his achievement, giving him a playful smack. Lloyd was just happy that Sylvie was safe, though Clum wouldn't be returning to the team. Silica noted they needed to plan for their future, but Cross was just happy to celebrate. Dagus then asked what they'd want if given a second life. Silica shyly said she'd like to be a wife. In the middle of the fun, Lloyd surprised everyone by asking to officially join their team, on the condition that they didn't mind having someone like him. Dagus thought he was against the idea, but Cross was thrilled. Silica said Lloyd's presence was reassuring. Yui warmly welcomed him to the team, shaking his hand. She declared it was time for a welcome party. Lloyd insisted it wasn't necessary, but Yui wasn't having it. That's just how things are done. She cheekily asked if he'd follow her, and while the rest thought she just wanted an excuse to party, Yui insisted she was being serious. After that, they threw a welcome party for Lloyd and told him to eat as much as he wanted. They were covering the bill tonight. Lloyd didn't need to hear that twice and started eating like he'd never seen food before. His new party watched in amusement. They asked if he was starving, and Lloyd cheerfully replied that the food in this town was amazing. That surprised everyone, because honestly, the food was just average. Lloyd explained that compared to what he grew up eating, the food here was bursting with flavor. Yui was instantly curious about his childhood. Lloyd shared that he lived with his teacher, who cooked whatever grew in her garden, sometimes wild mushrooms, other times random beast meat, always served without any seasoning. He learned to cook, but even his best efforts couldn't match the city's plain food. At this point, Yui didn't care about the food anymore. She was far more curious about Lloyd's mysterious teacher. The others chimed in too. Silica asked if his teacher was also a white mage. Lloyd shook his head. She was more of a combat mage. He often saw explosions whenever she worked alone. Silica was amazed that a non-white mage trained Lloyd so well, but Lloyd assured them that Merlin was beyond amazing. When Silica mentioned she'd love to learn from her, Lloyd stopped her immediately, warning that she'd regret saying that for the rest of her life if she ever knew the truth. Clearly, there's a story there. After some more chatting about Merlin, they got serious and held a strategy meeting for their mission. Yui, who admitted she was terrible at presentations, asked Dagus to explain the details to Lloyd. Dagus explained that their mission was to eliminate monsters destroying local farms. Silica added that multiple monster species had formed a pack, which was a first for Lloyd and even new for them. Then Cross pointed out that since they'd be facing a large number of enemies, both he and Yui would struggle. Physical attackers aren't great against mobs. Yui agreed and said Silica would have to carry them with her Wideria spells. But Silica looked uneasy. Those spells drained a lot of mana. Yui then asked Lloyd if he could use offensive magic. He admitted he could, but only basic level spells, and they weren't exactly impressive. Moving to the formation strategy, Dagus said that he and Yui would gather the monsters together for Silica to blast them all at once. Cross would guard Silica and Lloyd, while Lloyd would focus on healing and support. With the plan set, everyone headed to the inn to rest except Lloyd, who wandered off in another direction. Dagus stopped Lloyd, asking where he was going, and Lloyd nervously admitted he was too broke to afford a room at the inn. Without hesitation, Dagus tossed him a pouch filled with more gold than Lloyd had ever seen in his life. Lloyd panicked and said he couldn't accept it, but Dagus coolly replied that it wasn't charity. He just deducted from Lloyd's future salary. No escape from that deal, so Lloyd accepted and promised to work hard to repay it. The next morning, the team gathered in front of the inn. Yui arrived last and noticed no one was carrying luggage. The others proudly told her that Lloyd stored everything with his magic storage. Not wanting to miss out, Yui handed over her gear too, and Lloyd stashed it away instantly. Yui and Silica were thoroughly impressed, but Lloyd humbly offered to teach them the spell. This shocked them. No one had ever seen storage magic like this outside of Lloyd. Still, he insisted it was easy, though expanding capacity required training. They set off on their mission. On the way, Lloyd learned that long quests are more fun with friends. They reached the campsite way ahead of schedule, thanks to having no baggage. As they unpacked, Yui tried to sneak off for a splash in the river, but Dagus scolded her. There was still firewood and food to gather. Lloyd volunteered for the firewood, and Yui thanked him before dragging Silica away for a bath. While gathering sticks, Lloyd spotted a fruit from his childhood and picked some for the team. Suddenly, he heard Yui scream. He rushed back to find a giant serpent monster attacking the bathing Yui and Silica, who were totally defenseless. Lloyd dashed in, drawing the monster's attention, giving the girls time to cover up. He even tossed them their weapons like a gentleman after making sure they were decent. He cast 2 enchantments on them, and Yui sliced the monster in 2 with a single strike. But the severed head kept fighting, so Silica blasted it with a fireball way stronger than usual. She was confused by her own power, not realizing Lloyd had buffed her. Afterward, Yui thanked Lloyd and asked him to store her sword, but then her towel slipped, giving Lloyd an unintended glimpse of the plot. Naturally, she slapped him into next week. Back at camp, Lloyd started teaching storage magic. He told them to open a space with your palm, but they all looked like they were squishing invisible balloons. Lloyd felt like a terrible teacher until Silica, after some trial, succeeded by chanting the spell. Everyone realized they needed incantations, unlike Lloyd, who was just casually overpowered. Later that night, during watch, Yui thanked Lloyd for joining them. He joked that he was unemployed, so he should be the one thanking her. Curious, he asked why she was so determined to finish this quest. Yui shared that monsters had destroyed her village when she was a child. She was the only survivor. That's why she couldn't ignore this mission. But suddenly, Lloyd shushed her. Monsters were nearby. Yui drew her sword while Lloyd told her to wake the others. Soon the team faced a swarm of spider monsters. They tried to retreat, but Yui stepped on a twig, classic horror movie move, and the spiders surrounded them, spitting webs. One even snatched Silica's staff. Lloyd quickly enchanted the team. Yui slashed through the webs, Cross recovered Silica's staff, and Yui chopped off spider legs like she was dicing onions. Then, she literally surfed on a spider's silk spray to the next one, slicing its legs too. Next, Lloyd told Silica and Cross to go on the offense. Silica launched fireballs, and Cross shot arrows through them, lighting the spiders up like a barbecue. When it was all over, Lloyd realized he'd been shouting commands like a leader and apologized for overstepping. But Dagus praised him, saying he had natural leader vibes. The others agreed and encouraged him to keep leading in battle. By morning, everyone had learned storage magic well enough to carry their own gear. As they continued their journey, Lloyd kept pondering, why were those spiders even there in the first place? Over the next few days, Lloyd takes it upon himself to keep watch in case anything similar happens. But the others are starting to get worried since it's not healthy for him to stay up so late. They offer to go back to rotating shifts, but Lloyd tells them he's perfectly fine. He's used to staying up late. After all, with how mediocre he thinks his skills are, this is the only way he feels he can contribute to the team. That's absolutely not true, and everyone knows it. But even after all the time they've spent trying to convince Lloyd that his skills are extraordinary, he remains completely oblivious. So, Silica tells them to just drop the subject for now. now so they can get some sleep. But before they go, she begs Lloyd not to push himself too hard. The next morning, the party continues their journey, and Yui is getting concerned about how low Lloyd's confidence is. So, when she sees him silently casting a spell, she walks over to ask what he's doing. Lloyd explains that he's just casting a simple detection spell to see if any monsters are nearby. But there's nothing simple about that. Detection magic is so rare that Yui has never actually met anyone capable of using it. But to Lloyd, it's not even worth mentioning. He says his detection range isn't that large, just a few kilometers, but thinks it would be safer to use the spell periodically for the rest of the trip. Yui agrees that using detection magic would make the journey safer, but she worries that making Lloyd use such a powerful spell so often might be too much of a burden. She offers to help, but Lloyd tells her he can handle it. Later that night, Lloyd is staying up again for watch duty. Meanwhile, in their tent, Yui and Silica start wondering if Lloyd doesn't trust them or something. They know he's capable, but he's refused to rely on anyone in the team, despite them being companions. Silica thinks it's nothing to worry about. It takes time for people to warm up to teammates. She and Yui barely spoke at first, but now they're great friends. Lloyd is a little different. He thinks he's weak and tries too hard to prove himself. There's probably a reason for it, and she's sure he'll open up eventually. Outside, Lloyd is still on watch when Dagus walks up and says he needs a favor. He asks Lloyd to help him with something. Lloyd is hesitant to leave his post, but Cross shows up and offers to take over the watch. So, Lloyd agrees. They head deeper into the woods, and Dagus sets up a chime system between the trees. Lloyd asks what it's for, and Dagus explains the chimes will alert them to monsters, so Lloyd doesn't need to stay up all night anymore. Lloyd starts to protest, saying he can't use detection magic while sleeping. Dagus asks if Lloyd really trusts them that little. Lloyd immediately denies it, but his actions say otherwise. He scouts alone, refuses help, and never lets others take watch. He explains that for years, Merlin told him he needed to be independent, and the first party he joined after coming to the capital called him useless. So, he pushed himself to be useful. Dagus tells him he doesn't see Lloyd as a burden, and even if he were, the whole point of having a team is to rely on each other. Lloyd had literally never thought about it like that. This is a big realization for him. Dagus wonders what kind of hardship Lloyd must have gone through to end up this way. But for now, he says they should just get some sleep. They head back to camp, and Cross takes over the watch while Lloyd and Dagus get some shut-eye in the tent. Lloyd isn't used to the idea, but having true companions sounds nice, so he wants to give it a try. The next morning, Lloyd finds Yui and asks if she can help fetch some water. Yui freezes in disbelief. It's the first time Lloyd has asked her for help, but she's happy he's finally starting to rely on her and gladly agrees. Meanwhile, in a nearby castle, an evil count named Michaels receives a report saying all the magic stones have been placed as planned. Michaels is pleased, everything is going smoothly. Thanks to the monster attacks he arranged, almost all the adventurers in the capital have been sent on missions. The only ones left are low-ranking adventurers and the hero party. Honestly, he wishes the hero party was gone too, but he's confident he can overwhelm them easily. Back in the forest, Lloyd and the team keep moving. But Yui starts getting a bad feeling. It's unnaturally quiet. The group finds it strange that they haven't encountered any monsters in this part of the forest. Yui asks Lloyd if he had something to do with the absence of monsters, but he tells her he's only been using detection magic, and it doesn't repel monsters at all. That means something else must be scaring the monsters away. So Lloyd increases the range of his detection magic to figure out what it is. After scanning for a few seconds, he finally spots something. He tells everyone there's a horde of monsters about 2.5 kilometers ahead, and according to the map, that's the direction of the farm they were heading to. Before they discuss that further, Yui asks Lloyd to seriously scan everything in a 2-kilometer radius. Lloyd confirms it, though he still doesn't think it's anything special. But the others quickly point out that's over 10 times the distance even the most talented mages can manage. Lloyd had no idea that 2 kilometers was considered impressive. He instinctively downplays it, saying that 2 kilometers is pretty much his limit and it uses up a lot of mana, so he can't do it often. Still, it's nothing short of incredible. Yui is getting frustrated with how dense Lloyd is when it comes to recognizing his own power. But there's no time to argue. They've got a mission to deal with. They arrive at the farm, and even though they were warned about the number of monsters, actually seeing it in person is terrifying. there are tons of high wolves, but Lloyd remembers the reports saying the horde included many different monster types. So where did the others go? The team agrees something is off. There should be stronger monsters in the area, ones that would easily overpower the wolves. So why are only the wolves present? Lloyd asks Yui if she knows where the farm owner is, but she says she's not sure. The request mentioned the owner was injured and staying with his son in the city. Just then, Cross notices something strange down on the farm. He tells the others to take a look, but none of them can see what he's talking about. Their vision isn't as sharp. Even Lloyd can't see it, so he casts enhancement magic on his eyes, and now he spots it, an ominous magic stone in the middle of the field. He casts the same vision buff on the others. They all agree, it looks dangerous. Based on its aura, Lloyd suspects it might be orc magic. Merlin once told him that orc magic can control monsters, so someone might be using that stone to lure monsters to the farm. To confirm, Lloyd casts his detection magic again. Just as he feared, another massive horde of monsters is heading straight for them. But he wonders, why would someone go to all this trouble? If the goal was to eliminate the party, there were easier ways. Cross interrupts his thinking and reminds him they've got another horde on the way, so they should retreat. But Yui argues they can't. If they do, the farm will be destroyed. Cross points out that they can't handle over 1,000 monsters alone. But Daggis says retreating might not be an option. They could lead the horde straight to a village. They're stuck. No one is sure what to do. Then Lloyd says they should stay and fight. He has a plan. Step 1. Destroy the magic stone. Lloyd asks Cross if he can shoot the stone from this distance. Cross, a skilled marksman, says he can aim at it, but he's not sure he can destroy it in one shot. Lloyd tells him that's fine. He can enhance the shot. Lloyd casts 3 layers of enhancement magic on Cross, on his body, bow, and arrow, which boosts the power enough to shatter the stone in one shot. Cross is amazed. Lloyd casually explains what he did, still not realizing that casting 3 simultaneous enhancements is highly advanced magic. With the crystal destroyed, the monsters begin to attack each other, no longer under mind control. Even if they don't completely wipe themselves out, it should reduce their numbers drastically. As for the second horde, Lloyd had hoped they would turn back after the crystal was broken, but no such luck. The team braces for battle. As the horde closes in, Lloyd tells them to wait for the right moment. Just as the monsters reach Silica, Lloyd gives the signal. Silica casts Firestorm, and the spell is shockingly powerful, literally vaporizing monsters. The others are stunned. There's no way her spell should be that strong. Lloyd explains he cast mana enhancement and mana efficiency on her, making the spell far more effective. Next phase, aerial threats. Lloyd runs to Cross and forms a mental link, something else he can apparently do, and uses spatial magic to send Cross the exact locations of all flying monsters through the smoke. With Lloyd's help, Cross snipes them all. Final phase, storm suppression. Lloyd rushes back to Silica and asks if she's finished with the land monsters. She has, but she's low on mana. Lloyd tells her not to worry and asks her to hold his hand. She does, and Lloyd transfers mana directly into her. With the extra mana, Silica casts a massive weather spell to summon storm clouds, extinguishing the forest fires. As soon as it's done, she collapses, completely drained. Lloyd is exhausted too. Despite saving the entire operation, Lloyd only thinks about how inadequate he must be for getting tired. But something still doesn't feel right. Lloyd realizes this might have been a trap all along. The monster attack seems like a setup meant to lure high-ranking adventurers away from the capital. If that's true, then the real target might be the city itself. He shares his theory with the others. Someone may have wanted to weaken the city's defenses before launching an attack. Yui reminds him that the hero's party and the knights are still in Ishtar, so the city isn't defenseless. Still, coming from Lloyd, a warning like this can't be ignored. To be safe, Yui suggests they all head back immediately. Lloyd agrees. Without a word, he casts speed boost on the entire party and takes off running back toward the city. The others watch him zoom away, confused until they suddenly realize they're moving just as fast. They realize Lloyd must have done something, so they ask him for an explanation. He casually tells them he boosted everyone's speed so they could reach the city faster. The group appreciates it, but maybe next time he could mention when he's casting spells, so his contributions don't fly under the radar. While Lloyd and the party are racing back to the city, the Count sits at his desk with a glass of, hopefully red wine when General Gree walks in. Gree asks how the plan is going, and the Count says it's nearly ready, all thanks to the girl Briss kidnapped. She's been incredibly useful. In fact, he has a whole list of experiments he wants to try on her once the city of Ishtar falls. Briss senses the Count is up to something dark, but he keeps quiet. After all, this is the former right-hand man of the Demon Lord, questioning his methods. Not advisable. Meanwhile, the girl is imprisoned in the Count's dungeon. He visits now and then with magic potions, only to harvest her magic and create those monster-attracting crystals. It's happened so many times, she's lost the will to fight. Back with Lloyd's group, they're crossing a vast field, nearly back to the city. But Silica starts worrying about Lloyd's health. It must be tough keeping up speed magic for so long. Lloyd, however, has no clue what she's worried about. Once you get used to it, enhancement magic barely uses any mana. The others ask what he means by getting used to it. So Lloyd explains, when he was younger, Merlin left him in the middle of a forest and told him to find his own way back. As a white mage, he couldn't fight monsters, so he just cast support spells on himself and ran for his life. After a lot of trial and error, he finally made it home. Everyone is shocked, but Lloyd insists it must be standard training. Yui and Silica pause and break the news. Most legal guardians don't toss their kids into the wilderness for training. Lloyd, of course, takes this to mean normal kids go through even worse and concludes his skills must be subpar. Classic Lloyd logic. After their break, Lloyd casts the spell again and they continue running until he suddenly stops, making everyone tumble. He explains that he sensed something ahead with a scan, but isn't sure what. Silica asks if it's a monster. Lloyd doesn't think so. It feels more like a hunter stalking prey. He tells the group to go ahead while he checks it out. Yui immediately objects. He doesn't know what he's walking into, and if it's dangerous, he'd be in trouble. The rest agree they're a team, so they're investigating together. Lloyd appreciates their concern and leads them to the source. Now closer, he confirms there are demons in the house. When Yui hears this, she asks if he's sure. Demons are usually found in the Mega, and right now they're banned from the continent's 3 major nations. Everyone looks confused. It's basic knowledge, but Lloyd looks like he's hearing it for the first time. Embarrassed, Lloyd admits he has no memories from childhood. His earliest memory is the day Merlin took him in after the war was already over. If there really are demons here, Daga suggests reporting it to the city knights immediately. Lloyd agrees, but he wants to gather a bit more intel first. The others warn it's too risky, but Lloyd explains that the mana inside feels just like the one from the magic crystal that attracted monsters. If these demons are tied to whoever's behind the city attack, then it's worth the risk. Yui agrees it's their duty as adventurers to protect people, and this might be their chance to prevent the attack on Ishtar entirely. Yui convinces the others that it's their duty as adventurers to protect the people, and the demons clearly pose a threat. Besides, if they're lucky, they might be able to stop the attack on Ishtar altogether. So, they decide to give it a shot. When they peek through the house window, they're shocked to find it completely empty. Lloyd does another scan and realizes the demons are underground and definitely up to something sketchy. He asks Silica if she can use earth magic to get them down there. She confirms she can. Lloyd casts enhancement magic on everyone, and Silica uses her sand pit spell to open a hole in the ground, dropping the whole party straight into the middle of the demons' ritual. The demons are stunned and demand to know who the intruders are, but Yui holds her sword to one of their faces and threatens him for answers. Before he can respond, another demon uses earth magic to launch rocks at Yui, forcing her to dodge and giving the first demon time to escape. He bolts, running past the demon who helped him, and locks the door behind him to keep Yui from following. The remaining demons try to sneak up on her, but Cross shoots both in the legs, allowing Yui to finish them off easily. With those demons handled, the party regroups and prepares to chase down the last one. Meanwhile, the escaping demon tries to wrap the imprisoned girl in a magical cocoon to transport her. But Yui and the others burst through the door, forcing him to flee again. They chase him up the stairs and out into the open. Realizing the demon might escape, Lloyd tells Yui to run ahead and cut him off, while Silica and Dagus flank from the sides. The demon finds himself surrounded. Lloyd tells him to surrender, he's got questions. But instead, the demon tries one final attack, casting a lightning spell. Lloyd reacts quickly, casting shields over everyone and blocking the attack. The final strike pierces the demon's chest, taking him down. Lloyd then unwraps the cocoon and is surprised to find a beast girl inside. They take her back to the cabin and lay her in bed to rest. With all the demons gone, they've got no one left to question, except this girl. Dagus asks asks if Lloyd can heal her. He agrees and raises his staff to begin. Silica is amazed at how effective his healing magic is. Lloyd casually explains he's made a few improvements to it in his spare time. Yui quickly points out that most adventurers can't improve spells at all. What Lloyd did is almost unheard of. Lloyd admits he didn't realize that, since Merlin used to make him help refine her spells all the time. At least now, he understands enough not to brush off his own skill. Soon after, the girl wakes up. As soon as her eyes open, Yui bombards her with questions. The girl can barely keep up, but manages to tell Yui her name is Claire. Progress. Lloyd gently takes over and asks Claire if she knows why the demons imprisoned her. She doesn't answer, so he changes topics. He explains that they're adventurers who came to save a farm being attacked by monsters. The monsters were drawn by a magic crystal, and he could sense beast magic coming from it. Lloyd remembers that some beast folk have the power to control beasts, so he asks if the magic came from her. Claire hesitates, but finally admits her magic was powering the stones. Meanwhile, back in the city, a group of guards discovers one of the magic stones left behind by the demons, but it's too late. Monsters have already started appearing, and it won't be long before the entire city is overrun. Meanwhile, back in the city, Alan is getting frustrated because he can't find a replacement for Lloyd. All the white mages who applied could barely cast 2 spells at a time, while Lloyd could easily use 5. Rena tries to tell him Lloyd might have been a special case, but Alan refuses to believe it. His pride won't allow him to admit he was wrong. Instead, he decides all the white mages in the city must be even more useless than Lloyd, so they just need to keep recruiting. Just then, a member of the Imperial Guard arrives with bad news. Monsters have been spotted outside the city, over 10,000 of them, and the king wants the heroes' party to help defend the city. Confident as ever, Alan accepts without hesitation. The guard breathes a sigh of relief, assuming Alan knows what he's doing. Spoiler, he absolutely doesn't. After the guard leaves, Sheena warns Alan that 10,000 monsters is too much for them to handle alone, but he's more interested in the glory of fulfilling a royal request. The others can already tell this won't end well. Meanwhile, in the forest, Lloyd and Claire locate the second wave of monsters. If they join the horde headed for Ishtar, the city won't survive. Lloyd says they must act, but Claire asks if there's a way to stop them without killing them. She feels responsible since her power was used to summon them. Seeing her concern, Lloyd promises to save the town while minimizing monster casualties, but he'll need her help. He asks if she can send the monsters back to their natural habitats. Claire says it's possible, but doubts she can manage such a large group. Lloyd offers to boost her abilities with his support magic. She agrees to try, but before she can cast the spell, something interferes, forcing them to investigate. Back at the guild, Alan calls a meeting with all remaining adventurers, only to insult them for being weak. Sheena points out that all A rank and higher parties are away on missions, leaving only B rank and below. Alan keeps treating them like disposable pawns, which angers them, but the guild branch manager intervenes, reminding everyone they're here to fight monsters, not each other. Alan outlines his plan. All mages will cast their strongest attack spells to kill 10 monsters each, then rest while the melee fighters hold the line, repeating until victory. In theory, fine, but the adventurers explain their strongest spells can only kill 1 monster at best. Alan calls them incompetent until Mia admits she couldn't do it either. She explains her magic weakened suddenly, and Sheena, Lulu, and Rena say the same. It started the day after Lloyd left. Alan accuses them of lying, but Rena fires back, saying the same thing should be happening to him, and that he's too distracted by glory to notice he's weaker. She bluntly tells him he doesn't deserve his title, in front of everyone. Humiliated, Alan tries to punch her with full force, but she stops him effortlessly. The whole guild sees it, destroying his reputation. Embarrassed, Alan runs out, and the remaining adventurers are left wondering how someone like him ever became a hero. With him useless, they're forced to figure out how to defend the city before the monsters arrive. They were starting to consider abandoning the city, but Rena told everyone to calm down. She was still willing to stay and fight. The adventurers felt reassured having someone as competent as Rena on their side, though she couldn't deny the situation was bad. Her first order of business was to ask if anyone had seen a man named Lloyd recently. While Rena searched, Lloyd was deep in the forest with Claire, where they discovered a magic crystal identical to the ones he'd seen before. The dark energy radiating from it was likely interfering with Claire's spell. Unless they destroyed it, she wouldn't be able to regain control over the monsters. But with at least a dozen crystals scattered through the forest, finding them all would be difficult. Lloyd asked if Claire could sense the crystals' locations. She could, if she was close enough, but the forest was too vast for her to detect them all. Without hesitation, Lloyd cast sensory sharing and enhancement on her, letting him receive the crystals' locations directly. He followed this with invisibility magic for them both, impressing Claire with how effortlessly he worked. They slipped past the monsters, and Claire began dispelling the dark magic. Back in the city, adventurers gathered outside the walls, uneasy about the coming battle. Rena told them that Lloyd had been the real reason behind the hero party's past successes. When asked why he was expelled, she admitted it was due to the party's arrogance. They'd mistaken victories as their own doing, ignoring Lloyd's support. She wanted to ask him for help, but the guild manager explained he was away with an S-rank party on a monster subjugation mission. Rena guessed that with his magic, he might already be on the way back. With no better option, she declared they would bet everything on his return. Her defense plan had archers striking first, shield bearers blocking the trenches, and mages hitting hard from behind. It wouldn't be easy, but they could hold out until Lloyd arrived. That night, Yui and the others approached Ishtar, still boosted by Lloyd's magic. Meanwhile, Lloyd and Claire found the final magic stone. Once destroyed, the monsters reverted to normal, but the nearby high wolves and blood panthers immediately turned on each other. In the chaos, a monster bumped into Claire, dispelling her invisibility. Surrounded and frozen in fear, she forgot she could control monsters. She was nearly attacked before Lloyd diverted their attention. In the city, the defenders were exhausted, and the monsters were breaking through. Just as hope faded, a massive fireball from Yui's group lit up the battlefield. Elsewhere, Lloyd continued dodging attacks, refusing to harm the monsters because he'd promised Claire to minimize casualties. Realizing this, Claire finally used her power, singing to calm the monsters and lead them back into the forest, something Lloyd wished she'd done sooner, though he was impressed nonetheless. Claire remembers that Lloyd had promised to keep monster casualties to a minimum for her sake, which is likely why he refused to attack them. Not wanting him to suffer because of her, the monsters in the area freed from mind control, Lloyd tells Claire they need to hurry back to Ishtar. Meanwhile, in Ishtar, the battle is still raging. Even with the help of Yui's party, they've barely made a dent in the horde, and their weapons and mana are running dangerously low. It truly looks like the city is on the brink of collapse. Rena urges everyone not to give up, certain they'll find a way to win, but the front lines have already been breached, and people are falling one after another. By morning, all defenses have been destroyed, and the guild manager fears Ishtar's end is near. Just as the city is about to be overrun, a voice rings out from the cliff near the forest, Claire's song amplified by Lloyd's magic. One by one, the monsters stop attacking and return to the forest. When the last of them disappears, Claire stops singing, nearly collapsing from exhaustion, but Lloyd catches her. Both are relieved that they saved the city. However, the crisis is far from over. The demons had planned more than one attack. Now, a massive horde of golems is marching toward Ishtar. Meanwhile, Count Michael is lounging in his castle, smugly assuming that Ishtar has already been overrun by monsters. But his confidence crumbles when a messenger rushes in with urgent news. Expecting victory, Michael is shocked to hear that the monsters suddenly stopped their attack and retreated back into the forest, all except the golems apparently unaffected by Claire's song. Lloyd suspects demon interference, but either way, the golems are a serious threat. He casts a speed boost on Claire and they dash toward the city. Unfortunately, they're spotted and Lloyd tells Claire to fall back before the golems land a punch. After examining them, he realizes these golems are enhanced, which makes defeating them even harder. As they near the trench around Ishtar, Lloyd grabs Claire by the waist and leaps across. The soldiers are stunned. Jumping that far while carrying someone is insane, but they quickly remember Lloyd's legendary enhancement magic. On the other side, Lloyd reunites with Yui and the others. They thank him, but he insists Claire deserves the credit since it was her magic that sent the monsters away. Still, the golems are approaching fast and preparations must be made. Suddenly, Lloyd's knees buckle, and he collapses. Days of non-stop enhancement magic have finally caught up with him. The others beg him to rest, but Lloyd refuses until the city is safe. The guild master arrives, and Lloyd entrusts Claire's safety to him. The guild master swears to protect her, grateful that Lloyd returned in time, their only real hope. Lloyd, confused, asks why the hero party isn't handling this. Rena explains bitterly that Alan refused to join the fight. Shocked, Lloyd can't believe a so-called hero would abandon his people. Rena insists Alan doesn't deserve the title at all. Lloyd notices her wounded arm and heals it instantly, though the strain nearly makes him faint. Rena tells him he didn't need to push himself, but Lloyd couldn't leave her injured. She finally apologizes for failing to appreciate everything he did for the hero's party, admitting he was the real reason they were strong in the first place. Lloyd denies it, but Rena insists his support was invaluable, and she regrets not stopping Alan from expelling him. Before the moment can continue, the alarm bells ring. The golems have arrived. Some fall into the trench, but many make it through. Guards rush forward to strike, but to their horror, their swords shatter against the golems' rock-hard bodies. One soldier is promptly knocked out with a single punch. Panic spreads as even magic and ranged attacks bounce off the creature's tough exterior. Serena raises her shield and calls for a full assault, but the situation only grows more desperate. Lloyd steps up and announces that he'll cast enhancement magic on everyone. Yui warns him that boosting over 100 people is insane in his current condition, but Lloyd insists. Still, he admits he can only strengthen them one group at a time. He casts strength boosts on the front line and mana boosts on the mages, also enhancing Yui's party. Exhausted, his legs nearly give out, and he warns them to hurry. He doesn't know how long the effects will last. Yui nods, ready to fight. As the golems march closer, Rena climbs to the top of a tower and shouts to the soldiers, telling them that Lloyd has just cast enhancement magic on all of them, so they can fight back. The soldiers hesitate, doubting that Lloyd really boosted everyone so quickly. But when one is about to be crushed by a golem, Rena rushes in and blocks the strike. At that moment, Yui leaps down from the tower and slices the golem clean in half. With the first golem defeated, Rena raises her shield and declares this as proof of Lloyd's magic. The soldiers finally believe, realizing they do feel stronger. Morale surges, maybe they can actually win. Meanwhile, Lloyd gives orders. Cross should help the magic unit in the rear, while Dagus and Silica rush to the front lines. As for Lloyd himself, he's barely standing, so a guard helps him to the fort to rest. Thanks to Lloyd's buffs, the adventurers rip through the golems one after another. Lloyd cheers them on from a tower, but just as the final golem remains, his enhancements suddenly fade. The adventurers are powerless again, and if that last golem breaks into the city, it'll wreak havoc. Yui steps forward to block it, but when it swings, Rena shoves her aside so Dagus can intercept the blow. They hold it back, but only barely. Lloyd realizes he has to act. With almost no mana left, he scrapes together enough to enhance Yui's sword. She notices immediately and asks Dagus and Rena to cover her. As they raise their shields, Yui dashes forward, runs up the golem's arm, and slices its head clean off. At last, the city of Ishtar is saved. Exhausted, Lloyd breathes a sigh of relief and collapses. Meanwhile, in Count Michael's castle, his general storms and furious. The beast squirrel they captured for their plan has escaped. But Michael, knowing the attack had failed, has already packed up and fled. The enraged general smashes up the office, swearing to kill whoever ruined his plans. Back in Ishtar, Lloyd wakes up in an inn after sleeping for an entire day. Yui comes to check on him, relieved he's awake. The first thing Lloyd does is apologize, blaming himself for not being strong enough. But Yui, sick of his self-doubt, drags him to the door. When she opens it, a massive crowd is gathered outside, chanting his name. Lloyd panics, slams the door shut, and freaks out he's never had so much attention. Yui scolds him, saying the crowd only wants to thank their savior, and it's rude to slam the door on them. But when she opens it again, Lloyd has already jumped out a window and is circling the block just to avoid the cheering people. Meanwhile, at Merlin's house, Will stops by to visit. Just as he's about to open the door, a massive explosion erupts. Merlin steps out and Will jokes that explosions aren't the best way to welcome a guest. She defends herself, saying she thought he was an intruder. Will doesn't mind since he wasn't actually hit, while Merlin remains impressed at how he always manages to come away unharmed from her spells. Inside, Will finds Thor and Lily, two of his and Merlin's former teammates from their hero days. It has been ages since they were all together like this. Merlin immediately asks if Will has any news about Lloyd. Will explains that Lloyd was kicked out of the hero party some time ago. Merlin is shocked and can't understand why they would cast him out. Will reassures her, saying there's no need to worry, Lloyd is now part of an S-rank team and doing just fine. Relieved, Merlin listens as Will adds that from watching Lloyd, it seems she must have had some questionable parenting methods. Back in the city, Lloyd hides on a rooftop, watching crowds of people flooding the streets to find him. He still doesn't understand what's happening. His friends track him down, and he asks why everyone is after him. They explain that the people simply want to thank him for saving the city. Lloyd brushes it off, insisting he doesn't deserve gratitude because, to him, he only did the bare minimum. Yui scolds him for looking down on himself again, pointing out how he always sets unrealistic expectations and tortures himself for no reason. The others agree, telling him to have more confidence. For the first time, Lloyd actually seems to understand what they mean. Back at Merlin's, Will tells her that Lloyd is far too humble and doesn't realize his own strength. It's a miracle. He found a team that doesn't take advantage of him. Merlin quietly admits she may have made mistakes with how she raised him, but insists she only wanted to prevent him from repeating her own past failures. Meanwhile, in the city, Lloyd finally agrees to meet the crowd. The people thank him for empowering them during the battle, and to them, he is now the new hero of Ishtar. As for Alan, his refusal to help in the crisis costs him his hero title. Stripped of his status, his ego won't allow him to stay in a town that now celebrates Lloyd as a true hero. He orders his party to pack up, and although the girls are reluctant, they follow him. The next day, Lloyd and his friends are summoned to the Lord's castle, where they are surprised to find Claire already waiting. Yui asks if she was summoned as well, but moments later, Lord Abel arrives and explains that Claire is actually an honored guest. He reveals that she is the third princess of the Forest Empire, making her highly important. Lloyd and the others are stunned by this revelation. Abel asks their thoughts on Claire's power after witnessing it firsthand. Lloyd admits it's impressive, but also terrifying, as in the wrong hands, it could cause chaos. Abel agrees, saying that's exactly why they must not let the demons capture her again. Since the Empire will soon want to reclaim its princess, Abel assigns Yui's party a special mission: escort Claire to the royal capital Silphus. Normally, this would fall to the royal knights, but their presence would draw too much attention. Abel doesn't want to risk alerting the demons, who clearly crave Claire's power. Lloyd is certain the demons won't give up easily, but he and his companions accept the mission. The next morning, they set out on their journey. 10 days pass, and the group is still on their way to the capital. Moy starts to wonder how much farther they have to travel. Dagus reassures her that they should be arriving at a town soon, where they can finally rest. That town happens to be famous for its hot springs, so Yui excitedly asks Claire if she wants to visit one. Claire admits that she's never actually experienced a hot spring before, which shocks Yui, who insists she's been missing out big time. Meanwhile, the others rest under a tree and chat about how friendly Yui has been with Claire throughout the trip. Part of it is just Yui's personality, but it also helps keep the tension down, since the group is constantly reminded that they're technically on the run from demons. When they finally arrive at the town, the first thing they do is follow Yui's suggestion and head straight for the hot springs. Yui and Silica waste no time soaking in the bath, barely noticing how unusual it is that there are no other patrons around. Claire, however, is nervous about undressing in front of others and keeps her towel wrapped tightly around her. Silica and Yui reassure her that there's nothing to be embarrassed about since they're all girls, and eventually Claire agrees to join them, but only if they promise not to stare at her. A few minutes later, Yui finds herself staring at Claire anyway. Just as Claire begins to feel uncomfortable, Yui compliments her slim figure, saying it's fitting for a princess. Even so, Claire feels insecure because she doesn't have curves as large as Silica's. Yui's chest is also fairly large, but Silica teases that it's only because Yui has been overeating sweets and meat recently. Yui jumps up to argue, but quickly realizes Silica has a point, which annoys her even more. On the other side of the wall, Dagus, Cross, and Lloyd wash each other's backs, overhearing the entire conversation. While Dagus and Cross do their best to block out the embarrassing chatter, Lloyd's mind is elsewhere. He's worried that since the demons want to recapture Claire, they'll likely make a move soon. A large-scale attack within the kingdoms seems unlikely, but a smaller elite strike force is very possible. Lloyd begins thinking of countermeasures. Originally, the plan was to stay in the town town for just one night before continuing their journey. However, Lloyd calls a meeting and suggests staying for a few days so he can make preparations. Dagus agrees, saying he wants to upgrade his gear, and Silica adds that she could use some time to experiment with her magic. Cross says he doesn't really care either way, leaving the decision to Yui. With most of the group in favor of staying, Yui agrees to put their departure on hold. The next morning, Dagus heads out to browse the local weapon shops. He spends the morning searching but still can't find what he's looking for. While walking down the street, he spots Yui and Claire near a boat, looking as though they're about to go sightseeing. Yui asks Dagus what he's doing. Dagus explains that he has been meaning to get a new shield since his current one is getting old, but he hasn't had much luck finding a replacement, even after checking all the weapon shops in the city. Claire recalls seeing a weapon store in one of the back alleys, though it looked pretty run down, so she isn't sure if Dagus will find anything useful there. Dagus makes his way to the store. Inside, he finds no one around and wonders if the place is abandoned, until he notices the high-quality weapons hanging on the walls, confirming he's in the right place. Just then, the owner comes out and immediately starts yelling, thinking Dagus is one of the Julians who often cause trouble in his shop. Dagus, confused, explains that he's only here to browse for weapons. The old man apologizes for the misunderstanding and lets him look around. While Dagus is checking the shield selection, a group of men barges in. Their leader, Karen, starts yelling for the old man to come out. Noticing Dagus, Karen is surprised that the store even has a customer and obnoxiously asks if he's really here to shop. Dagus confirms that he's looking to buy a weapon, which makes the group burst into laughter. They assume he must be a low-ranked adventurer for shopping in such a shabby place. The owner comes out again, clearly angry. Karen smirks smugly and asks how business has been lately, though he already knows the answer, since he has been deliberately interfering with the shop. From this, Dagus realizes that Karen and his gang have been harassing the old man. Dagus steps in, but Karen's buddies warn him to back off, boasting that Karen is a rank adventurer and the strongest in town. Of course, that would only be true if there weren't an S-rank shield-bearer standing right in front of them. Unaware of Dagus's true rank, Karen continues to brag. Dagus challenges him, asking why a rank adventurer is wasting his time harassing an old man. Karen explains that he's after an artifact in the shop. The owner refuses to sell it to him, saying Karen isn't worthy and wouldn't be able to use it to its full potential. But Karen insists he'll simply beat the old man until he hands it over. Hearing this, Dagus steps forward and calls him a disgrace to all adventurers for even thinking that way. One of Karen's men angrily throws a punch, but it's too weak to faze him. Dagus grabs the man's arm, twists it behind his back, then pulls his shield out of storage and rams the entire group out of the shop. Karen is left stunned, realizing he completely underestimated Dagus. Calmly, Dagus pulls out his adventurer's ID and informs them that he's S-rank. He explains that he didn't mention it earlier because bragging about rank is lame, and he refuses to stoop to their level. After everything that just happened, the old man makes up his mind and calls for Dagus, saying he has a favor to ask of him. Meanwhile, back at the inn, Lloyd is busy working on his magic when Yui and Claire return from their sightseeing. Yui asks what he's doing, and Lloyd explains that he's trying to improve his support spells. He's also considering learning some new magic, but isn't sure what direction to take. Yui suggests he try attack spells, but Lloyd doubts it would help much. He's certain Silica's attack magic is far superior to anything he could manage. For once, Yui actually understands his insecurity, since finding a mage on Silica's level is practically impossible. Out in the forest, Silica is training her magic. She reflects that, during their last battle, if Lloyd and Claire hadn't shown up when they did, she and the others would likely have died. She can't keep depending on Lloyd to save the day, so she's determined to grow stronger by upgrading her spells. She spends hours working on a high-level fire spell, but every attempt so far has exploded in her face. Still, she refuses to give up. Failure is just part of the process. Back at the inn, Lloyd and the others sip tea. Yui tells him it's no exaggeration to call Silica a genius with magic. But what truly makes her special isn't raw talent, it's her relentless drive. She never quits until she masters a spell, no matter how tough or how long it takes. That persistence is on full display in the forest. Silica finally manages to control the new fire spell without it blowing up, and she's thrilled by the progress. Unfortunately, her excitement gets the better of her. She slips on the rock she's standing on, loses control, and the spell detonates in a huge explosion. Luckily, Silica survives with only minor scrapes and is relieved she didn't accidentally set the whole forest ablaze. Still, she's embarrassed by such a silly mistake. In public, she always keeps her guard up, but when she's alone, she tends to relax too much. With her clothes ruined and her energy drained, she decides to call it a day. Just as she's about to leave, she hears rustling in the bushes. Her first thought is that it's a monster, and if so, she's in trouble since she's already used up most of her magic reserves. But thankfully, it's only Dagus. They're both surprised to see each other, so Silica asks Dagus what he's doing in the forest. He explains it's a bit of a long story. Earlier, when the old man asked a favor of him, he revealed a legendary shield forged by one of the best blacksmiths in Ryans. The shield, called Aegis, is said to block any attack and is practically indestructible. Karen had been desperate to get his hands on it, but the old man refused. Not only because Karen couldn't wield something so heavy properly, but also because he simply didn't want such a work of art wasted on someone that annoying. With Dagus, however, it was different. The old man offered to give him the shield, but on one condition. Since that morning, people in town had been hearing strange explosions in the forest, and no one dared to investigate. If Dagus would look into it, the shield would be his. Silica is embarrassed to realize that her training was the cause of all the commotion. Dagus points to the massive crater she created, telling her it's no wonder the townsfolk were terrified. He then takes her back to the old man, where she apologizes profusely. The man forgives her since she fixed the crater and insists Dagus accept the shield anyway, respecting him as a true adventurer. Back at the inn, Dagus and Silica tell the others what happened. Everyone is impressed that Dagus obtained such a legendary shield and equally amazed that Silica already mastered a new spell. Yui even asks her to demonstrate it later. Seeing both Dagus and Silica improve so much in a single day makes Lloyd eager to grow stronger too, while Cross feels a little left out since he didn't accomplish much. Yui reassures them there's no need to rush. They'll all continue to grow. For now, she declares it's time to eat and drags Claire off to a restaurant. The next morning, Cross takes a walk through town, deep in thought about how he can get stronger. He can't afford to fall behind the others, but buying a new weapon or swinging a sword in the woods won't cut it. Just then, a young boy bumps into him and quickly apologizes. Cross tells him not to worry, it's no big deal. He notices the boy has an adventurer tag around his neck and asks if he's registered with the guild. The boy confirms and, after finding out Cross is also an adventurer, desperately asks him to join his party. Normally, Cross would have declined, but the kid looked so pitiful he couldn't say no. Besides, he had time to kill anyway. The boy introduces himself as Lin, then drags Cross to the town's adventurer guild. Cross notices that Lin carries a bow and arrows, clearly an archer, but wonders why he's running around solo, since archers without a party are basically free monster snacks. His question is quickly answered when the whole guild starts whispering and snickering. Turns out, Lin is infamous as a walking disaster with a bow. Everyone feels sorry for Cross, assuming he's about to get dragged down. Lin, embarrassed, admits he's only erring and apologizes for not mentioning it sooner. He even says he understands if Cross doesn't want to help a loser like him anymore. But Cross doesn't leave. To cheer him up, he says he's also looking for ways to get stronger. Of course, Lin immediately assumes that means Cross is low-ranked just like him, and happily declares them low-ranked brothers. Cross just sighs and decides it's not worth correcting the misunderstanding. Instead, he suggests they pick a quest from the notice board. Meanwhile, Yui is wandering the town in search of a dessert shop she heard about. But after weeks of eating sweets like there's no tomorrow, she's starting to worry about her waistline. Just then, she hears shouting. Turning around, she spots a pompous noblewoman berating a boy for getting mud on her dress. The boy is trembling, apologizing again and again. But the dress isn't really the issue. This woman just wants a victim. She orders her guard to execute the poor kid, and the man's creepy smile makes it clear he's been dying for an excuse to cut someone down. The townsfolk want to step in, but they don't dare. This noblewoman is apparently high-ranked nobility, the haired, and anyone who interferes would just end up her next victim. The soldier raises his sword, ready to strike the boy down, when suddenly Yui yells for him to stop. The noblewoman is outraged, demanding to know who dares interfere with her orders. Yui, unfazed, has absolutely no clue who this woman is, and honestly, she couldn't care less. All she sees is a cranky, ratchety old hag who gets her kicks by bullying the weak, and that's not happening on her watch. The woman gets flustered and orders her men to kill Yui first, so all of them charge without hesitation. Yui tells the boy to hurry up and escape while he still has the chance. As the guards strike, she pulls her sword out of storage. The men are baffled because they could have sworn Yui didn't have a sword a moment ago. Normally, that would be the kind of red flag that makes you reconsider your life choices, but the woman orders them to keep fighting. So they do what they're told, like good little disposable NPCs. Meanwhile, Cross and Lin are out on their first quest, tasked with killing some red slimes. Cross figures this should be an easy mission, even with Lin's atrocious aim. He pulls his bow out of storage and gets ready to fire, but oops, he forgot he's supposed to be pretending to be a low-ranked adventurer. When Lin notices, Cross quickly makes up an excuse, claiming it's just a basic spell a friend taught him. Nice save. Cross then takes aim and nails 3 slimes right through their cores. Lin thinks Cross is incredible, but Cross tells him he can't just sit there gawking, so he should try to. Lin gives it his best shot and somehow manages to shoot worse than a blindfolded archer on a roller coaster. Training him is going to be an Olympic-level challenge. Back in town, Yui is still holding her own against the guards. The noblewoman can't understand why her men are struggling against a single girl. The townsfolk eventually recognize Yui as the famous sword prodigy who became S-rank at just 16. Now it all makes sense. Honestly, she's probably going easy on them so she doesn't accidentally slice them into confetti. Yui asks the noblewoman if she's ready to give up, but nope, this hag's still got one trick up her sleeve. She signals to a mage hidden in the crowd, and suddenly a magic circle appears beneath Yui's feet. Chains shoot up and bind her, draining her mana until she can't move. With Yui stuck, the noblewoman orders her men to finish her off. But just then, another woman passing by notices the chaos. She knows it's not really her business, but watching 4-on-1 feels like bullying, so she decides to adjust the numbers. She takes a single step forward, and in the blink of an eye, all of the noblewoman's guards collapse unconscious. The only one who could even track what happened was Yui, because the woman dashed behind every guard and returned to her spot in less than a heartbeat. She was so fast, she probably could have stopped for coffee and a snack along the way, and no one would have noticed. And while Yui generally avoids killing people, this mysterious woman seems perfectly fine with taking home a head or 2 as souvenirs. So, when she threatens the noblewoman, the lady promptly faints like a cheap prop in a bad play. With the fight over, Yui thanks the woman for saving her, but also asks a favor. She's dazzled by the woman's incredible speed and wants to know how she can become that strong. The woman replies that Yui is already remarkably powerful for her age, so there's no need to rush. But Yui insists. She explains that her party has a white mage named Lloyd who's absolutely amazing, and she doesn't want to become a burden to him. The woman is surprised at the mention of Lloyd's name, then realizes Yui must be the leader of the party that Merlin once spoke of. It turns out this stranger was actually a former member of Merlin's party, and now she's officially interested in Yui. So she agrees to train her a little. Meanwhile, back at the inn, Lloyd is burning brain cells non-stop, trying to optimize his spells. The others start worrying about him, suggesting he take a break before he combusts. Claire even offers to take him on a walk around town. As for Yui, she's now deep in the woods with the woman. The woman finds it a little alarming that Yui just followed a random stranger into the forest without hesitation. But Yui shrugs it off. She's sure the woman isn't a bad person, though she would at least like to know her name. The woman hesitates, clearly allergic to honesty, and instead gives a fake name, Lilith. The dramatic pause before saying it only makes her seem more suspicious, but Yui still believes she's trustworthy and resolves to learn as much as possible from her. Meanwhile, Cross is teaching Lin how to properly use a bow. After a few pointers, Lin manages to graze a slime, progress worth celebrating. Cross encourages him to aim for the core next, and surprisingly, Lin pulls it off, landing a direct hit. Cross is stunned. He genuinely thought Lin was hopeless, but it turns out the kid's a quick learner. Back in the woods, Lilith begins Yui's training. Lesson 1. Cut down that tree over there. Sounds easy enough, until she adds that Yui has to do it without moving her feet. Because why make things simple when you can make them ridiculously hard? Yui thinks Lilith must be joking, cutting down a tree without moving her feet. That's basically asking for anime logic to do the heavy lifting. But then Lilith casually demonstrates the technique and fells the tree in one clean slash, like it's no big deal. She explains it's simple. Coat your sword in mana, swing with all your strength, and voila. Naturally, Yui is hyped to try it herself. Meanwhile, Lloyd and Claire are chilling by the hot springs, munching on snacks while soaking their feet. Lloyd is relieved to finally take a break from his non-stop magic research. But since magic is always on his brain, he asks Claire something that's been bugging him. He suspects the magic she used to control monsters might have been ancient magic. Claire freezes, oops, secret exposed, but admits it's true. Lloyd isn't surprised. Magic that powerful clearly wasn't cooked up in the modern era. So, he asks if he can learn it too, hoping it'll help with his research. Claire immediately says, nope, ancient magic users are born once every few centuries, and anyone else trying to force it risks catastrophic backlash. She even recalls records of a man who used ancient magic to save a village and promptly died for it. Her point, Lloyd should not be messing around with that stuff. Back with Cross and Lynn, they finally clear all the slimes. The job's done, though Cross silently curses the archer life. Reloading eats up precious time. He tells Lynn to help gather slime materials, but suddenly Lynn spots a giant spider. It's a high-level monster, and Lynn's survival instincts scream, run. But Cross isn't about to let all that slime loot go to waste. He fires an arrow at the spider's head, but it barely scratches. That's when Lynn has a light bulb moment. He tells Cross to try rapid firing. Cross scoffs. Archers don't rapid fire. That's called cheating. But Lynn insists he use his storage spell more creatively. So, Cross tries it, shoot, summon arrow, shoot again, instant reload. Suddenly, he's machine gunning arrows into the spider, finally piercing its shell. Back at Yui's training, she's been swinging at trees all day, failing miserably. Lilith notices her effort, but decides to add some motivation. She lets a panther attack her, forcing Yui to step in. Under pressure, Yui finally pulls off the mana slash, obliterating the beast. She's thrilled, right before collapsing from exhaustion. Luckily, Lilith catches her before she faceplants. That night, Lloyd and the others sit around the table, growing worried. Yui still isn't home. Just as concern peaks, Lloyd hears something at the front door. When Lloyd opens the door, he finds Yui passed out on the doorstep, like she just rage-quit reality. Meanwhile, a block away, Lilith strolls off into the night like a mysterious NPC who just finished her side quest. The next morning, the group prepares to resume their journey, but Lloyd looks pretty down. He feels bad because everyone else managed to pick up flashy new skills, while he only, and yes, he actually thinks this, optimized all his spells, learned new attack magic for large-scale battles, and invented an original search spell. Somehow, in Lloyd's brain, that's May. The rest of the group, however, is getting real tired of his I'm useless routine. They're basically one pep talk away from smacking some self-worth into him. Over in the demon world, after his genius plan to conquer a single town flopped harder than a broken magic wand, the demon general was forced to report his failure to the demon lord. The lord was, unsurprisingly, not thrilled. That army of monsters was supposed to be the cornerstone of their human world invasion, and now it's basically monster soup. He regrets trusting the general, but since it's too late for Plan B, he orders him to track down Claire and restart the invasion, or get stripped of his rank. Not much of a choice there. The general is panicking because he has no idea where Claire even is. Just then, the count shows up like nothing happened. The general is ready to strangle him for ditching him mid-disaster, but the count quickly blurts out that he has useful intel. Turns out, Claire is on her way to the royal capital, escorted by none other than an S-rank party. He even offers to help capture her, probably because he feels guilty, or maybe just desperate to stay alive. Either way, the general has no options, so he accepts. Meanwhile, back on the road, Lloyd and the gang are a little too tense. Case in point, they all go full berserker mode when a harmless bunny hops out of the bushes. Lloyd quickly scans the area and assures them there are no demons around. They're relieved, but also a little embarrassed, so they take a break to calm down. While sitting under the trees, Yui notices Lloyd smiling like a proud dad at a school play, so she asks what's up. He He admits it makes him happy to see everyone improving so much. Yui immediately senses where this is going and asks about his own progress. And yep, predictably Lloyd says he's been working hard, but he needs to push even harder so he doesn't drag the team down. At this point, it's the seventh Lloyd, stop calling yourself useless intervention, but the guy still doesn't get it. So Yui reminds him of the celebration they had in his honor back in town. Lloyd says, sure, he knows he's not totally incompetent, but insists he still needs to do better. The others finally cut in and tell him straight. The only reason they've been training so much is because they're trying to keep up with him. Lloyd protests that compared to his master, he's nothing special. The others may not know who his master is, but Claire makes it clear. From what she's seen, Lloyd is hands down the strongest person on their team. Yui drives it home. If he keeps underestimating himself, he'll never be able to use his full potential in battle. Lloyd only half follows the pep talk, but he gets the gist. So, he promises to try being more confident from now on. Whether he actually sticks to it, well, that's another story. Meanwhile, the one who gave Lloyd all his confidence issues is currently wandering the royal capital in search of an old friend. Her search takes her straight to the royal castle. She tries to stroll in like she owns the place, but the guards stop her at the gate. Apparently, random powerful magician isn't on the authorized guest list. Now, Merlin could have just gone invisible, flown over the walls, or pulled one of her 10,000 magical shortcuts. But no. Instead, she decides to show off by putting the guards under a Janjutsu-style spell. You know, classy illegal entry 101. Once inside, she makes her way through the halls and eventually arrives at a library that looks suspiciously ordinary. But Merlin isn't fooled. This is clearly a fake. With a casual wave of her finger, she dispels the illusion, revealing a hidden door. She's about to knock when the door swings open, and out steps Rina, yep, the noble's daughter. She immediately recognizes Merlin by her unique mana scent. Apparently, Merlin smells nice. Awkward reunion topic, but hey, they're happy to see each other. They sit down for tea like two old friends who both happen to dabble in world-shaking magic. First things first, Rina updates Merlin that the former demon lord's son is now running the demonocracy. But since the demons have been quiet lately, things on the human side have been relatively peaceful. Merlin, however, is skeptical. She points out that the emperor must really like Rina if he's letting her turn the royal library into her personal research lab. Rina admits it wasn't intentional. She just mimicked some of Merlin's magic, and somehow this arrangement stuck. Merlin waves off the compliment, saying her magic isn't worth copying, but Rina calls total BS. After all, Merlin's the one who pioneered storage magic and figured out how to cast countless spells without chanting. Basically, she's the magical equivalent of inventing Google and then saying, it's nothing. Merlin explains that she only made those innovations because they were necessary to defeat the demon lord back then. Speaking of which, she whips out a book. It's only half of the original grimoire, but she wants Rina to check if it still has the power to seal the demon lord. Rina asks if Merlin thinks the demon lord is gearing up for another invasion. Merlin shrugs, it's not certain, but she'd rather be prepared than end up regretting it later. Meanwhile, Lloyd and the crew are making great time. At this pace, they'll reach the town of Shores in a few hours, and from there, it's just a day's trip to the capital. But Claire is feeling uneasy, night is falling, and if they're still in the forest, monsters could attack. Cross reassures her, pointing out that Claire can control monsters. But Claire reminds him that her spell takes time to cast. If they're ambushed, she won't have enough time to activate it. To be safe, Lloyd decides to scan the area. Unfortunately, something interferes with his spell. Moments later, a thick fog rolls in, and everyone immediately knows this is bad news. Silica tries to disperse the fog with her wind magic, but when she reaches for her staff in storage, she realizes the fog is blocking her access. Yep, definitely demons. The party quickly concludes that fighting in these conditions would be a suicide mission. Their only option: sprint for Shores and hope they can reach shelter before things get really ugly. Meanwhile, in the royal capital, Rina has just finished analyzing the grimoire, and she informs Merlin that while there's still mana left in it, it's only the remnants of Sybil's magic. Merlin is relieved. Leftover magic is better than no magic, and to her, that's still a win. She then tells Rina about Lloyd and how he might have the potential to become a chosen one, just like she and Civil once were. Merlin's certainty comes from an incident when Lloyd was younger. One day, the boy accidentally picked up the grimoire, and the second he touched it, it reacted, meaning he was compatible with its magic. Realizing Lloyd was a chosen one, Merlin decided to raise him to be stronger than both her and Civil had ever been. Her teaching method, giving him impossible tasks, non-stop training, and the occasional "you're still not good enough" pep talk. Not exactly parenting 101. Sure, it was effective for growth, but not so much for emotional stability. Eventually, Lloyd couldn't take it anymore and ran away, only to later end up in an S-rank party, escorting the Beast Princess to the capital. Merlin admits she misses him terribly, which is part of why she came to the capital in the first place, to finally see him again. Meanwhile, on Lloyd's end, he and the gang finally arrive in Shores. But something feels off. The streets are eerily empty. The fog here is thinner though, which allows Lloyd to boost Silica's mana, just enough for her to summon her staff. With her trusty staff back in hand, Silica whips up a powerful gust to clear away the fog. As the mist vanishes, the group gets an unpleasant surprise. A horde of demons standing smack in the middle of town. Even worse, Claire immediately recognizes Gree, the one who kidnapped her before, and judging by his smug demon face, he's here for a round two. Lloyd instantly shifts into commander mode. He puts Dagus in charge of protecting Claire, assigns Cross to snipe from the tower, and tells everyone else to hold off Gree's troops. Yui charges in first with a devastating mana slash, slicing through a cluster of demons like she's chopping firewood. Silica, meanwhile, would love to solve this mess with a giant flame burst, but considering friendly fire isn't on today's menu, she settles for unleashing a barrage of smaller fire blasts instead. Fortunately, Cross is there to make up for the missing firepower, sniping a few demons with well-placed arrows. But when he aims at Gree, the shots bounce right off like they hit a brick wall. Yui rushes in with her mana slash, but Gree shrugs it off and charges straight for Claire. Luckily, Dagus intercepts, blocking the strike. Yui seizes the moment to sneak behind him and swing down her blade, only for it to pass right through, making zero contact. That's when Lloyd figures it out. Gree is using mana as armor, deflecting their attacks. Gree is impressed at Lloyd's quick deduction and immediately assumes Lloyd must have been the one who interfered with the attack on Ishtar. He leaps into the sky to strike at him. But hey, distance has its perks. It gives Silica the perfect opening to fire off a massive flame burst. Sadly, even her strongest spell barely scratches Gree's mana armor. The guy's still in one piece, and the team is rapidly running out of options. The situation gets worse as more demons surround them, until a sudden surge of ice erupts from the ground, freezing every demon in place. The one responsible, none other than the ice hero himself, Theon, who coolly declares that he's here to protect Claire. Meanwhile, up on a nearby cliff, the Count grows nervous that his plan might flop again. He starts preparing another batch of magic-dampening mist, but before he can finish, Will shows up. The Count is shocked someone tracked him down here. When he demands to know why, Will casually replies that the mist is annoying, so he came to cut it off at the source. Simple problems, simple solutions. Back in the city, Theon descends to meet the others. Without hesitation, he mocks them for being ridiculously weak for S-rank adventurers, but at least gives them some credit for keeping Claire safe this long. Claire rushes to him excitedly, and when Lloyd asks who this guy is, she explains that Theon is her childhood friend, and yes, the ice hero. The others are stunned, and Lloyd even wonders if that means he's the emissary sent to collect Claire, but nope, not at all. Theon admits he's not supposed to be here, but he couldn't possibly leave Claire's safety in the hands of a bunch of lousy adventurers. Claire scolds Theon, telling him that it's not nice to insult the very people who just saved her life. And since Theon clearly has a soft spot for her, he actually calms down for now. But just then, Gree manages to break free from Theon's ice. Theon immediately tells everyone to stand back. He's going to handle this solo. He hurls another ice attack at Gree, but it barely leaves a scratch. Looks like Theon's going to have to get serious if he wants to win. Gree is impressed by Theon's technique. He's not only casting without chance, but also using his body as a catalyst for ice magic, without freezing himself solid. Theon smugly explains that his body has a natural affinity for all ice magic, ever since the day he was born. But then he shrugs, because there's no point in explaining details to someone who's about to be dead. With that, he drops a massive cluster of ice from above. This actually freaks Gree out enough to make him dodge, proof that the guy can take damage. Theon then unleashes a relentless barrage of ice, forcing Gree to run around like he's in a deadly game of dodgeball. However, Lloyd notices something odd. Gree's fist is glowing with condensed mana. He realizes what's coming, a concentrated mana punch, the kind of move that can level a mountain. Lloyd yells for everyone to take cover, but it's already too late. Gree closes in on Theon, who has no choice but to counter with an ice-infused punch. The resulting blast is so powerful that even Will, up on the cliff, feels the shockwave. He's stunned. He never expected Gree to have a trump card like that. Unfortunately, his moment of surprise allows the Count to slip away unnoticed. Back in town, Lloyd rushes to check on his companions. He can still sense the consciousness of his party members, but there's no sign of Claire or Theon. Panic sets in until he spots the nightmare scenario, Gree escaping on an airship with Claire in his arms. Theon gets back up and tries to chase after Gree by forming an ice pillar beneath his feet. And hey, he actually comes pretty close to saving Claire, but his ice clearly wasn't rated for high-altitude acrobatics, so it crumbles beneath him. He goes crashing down while Gree escapes with Claire. Even for Theon, a fall like that could have been fatal, so Lloyd quickly tells Silica to whip up an air cushion to save him. Thanks to Lloyd's quick thinking, Theon lands safely instead of becoming street pizza. But Gree still has Claire, and Theon is desperate to go after them again. Lloyd stops him, reminding him that the airship is already at cruising altitude, so there's no way Theon could catch up now. Naturally, Theon is offended. How dare Lloyd suggest he do a better job at saving Claire than him? That's when the others chime in, pointing out that he literally just tried and failed, so statistically speaking, anyone else is likely to get a better result. Plus, if not for Lloyd's instructions, he'd be a pancake right now. So maybe trust the guy a little. Reluctantly, Theon admits he doesn't have many options and agrees to put his faith in Lloyd, as long as Lloyd doesn't hold him back. Lloyd thanks him and says he already has the perfect plan to rescue Claire, but it's going to require a whole lot of Theon's power. Meanwhile, on the airship, Gree is busy complimenting the Count for building such a spectacular flying fortress. He wonders why the Count didn't just use it to attack from above during the invasion of Ishtar. The Count replies that this is just the prototype and today's maiden voyage. That makes Gree a little nervous, but the Count reassures him that there's zero risk of sudden engine failure because he's got the perfect power source, a fragment of the body of the former Demon Lord. Gree is floored. The Count proudly explains that even though the Demon Lord's body was destroyed, he managed to snag a fragment that still held magical power. By analyzing its life force, he can now draw out nearly infinite magic. Gree is horrified, realizing the Count is basically siphoning energy from the Demon Lord's soul. And the guy looks way too smug about it, bragging that he wants to see many terrifyingly powerful monsters under his control. The excitement alone practically has him bricked up. At this point, Gree looks at the Count like, wow, this guy's even crazier than me. Before the Count can spout more unhinged nonsense, an alarm blares. They check the monitors and see Lloyd and the gang approaching. Turns out, they reach the airship using Theon's ice, along with some brand new anti-gravity magic Lloyd learned. The spell is still a little buggy, but hey, it worked. The crew boards the ship and immediately demands Claire's release. Gree races to the top deck, impressed by how annoyingly persistent they are. But he's not about to hand Claire over. Instead, he charges straight at them, ready for a fight. In a split second, Lloyd casts enhancement magic on everyone at once, letting them all dodge Gree's void strike. But when Theon tries to counterattack, his ice sword shatters instantly. Turns out, Gree's mana armor is just as sturdy in the sky as it was on the ground. Luckily, Lloyd has a plan. While Gree is distracted, Lloyd sneaks in a small spell on him, then signals everyone to go full WWE and jump Gree. They all attack like crazy, forcing Gree to keep spamming his mana armor, but they're barely scratching him. Eventually, Theon gets slammed against a wall, and Gree bursts out laughing at how weak their attacks are. But Theon smirks and says they never expected those puny attacks to break his shield anyway. Gree is confused, but instead of thinking too hard about it, classic villain move, he just charges up a condensed mana punch to finish Theon off. Before he can land it, Dagus jumps in front and blocks the attack. Then something bizarre happens. Gree's arm freezes solid and shatters into pieces. He's completely stunned since none of Theon's attacks ever connected. That's when Theon explains. It wasn't a direct attack, it was frostbite. Earlier, Lloyd used magic to block Gree's sense of pain, so he couldn't even feel his body freezing. And while the fight had been raging, Theon was quietly streaming cold energy at Gree the whole time. Normally, Gree's mana armor would have blocked it, but since he was busy fending off their barrage, he never noticed. Exactly as Lloyd planned. Now, with one arm down, Gree doesn't stand a chance. Lloyd demands that he return Claire, and Gree starts to panic. Desperate, he bolts for the lower deck and tells the Count to release all the caged monsters. The Count is shocked. He literally warned Gree earlier that those monsters are terrifying and not fully under control. But Gree is already fiddling with the locks like a madman. The others chase after him, and as soon as Theon spots Claire, he demands her release. Instead, Gree throws open the cages, releasing every monster. He orders them to attack Lloyd's group, but instead, one of the snakes immediately lunges at him. Oops. Turns out the Count wasn't kidding. The control system isn't finished, so the monsters won't listen to anyone. Thankfully, the Count has a backup plan. He pulls out a prototype control device hidden in the floorboards and activates a magic crystal, sending out sound waves to hijack the monsters' minds. The beasts freeze momentarily, and Theon seizes the chance to smash open Claire's cage by freezing the lock. He rescues her just in time because the Count starts ordering the monsters to attack Lloyd's group. It looks like they'll have to fight their way out, but before the brawl begins, Claire stops them. She doesn't want innocent monsters getting hurt, no matter what. She tells them she can handle it herself, so she starts singing to soothe the monsters with her ancient magic. And sure enough, the monsters all freeze in their tracks as soon as they hear her song. Claire's song takes a good 30 seconds to take effect. The Count could have tried something to stop her, but he was way too busy fanboying over seeing ancient magic up close. The only thing on his mind was, quick, someone get the recording crystal. However, while Claire was singing, the Demon Lord fragment began to react. Moments later, the entire ship started veering off course. The Count panicked, trying to figure out what went wrong, because at this rate, the ship might crash. At first, he wondered if the monsters that Claire took control of were the cause, but that wasn't it. Earlier, when the ship started shaking, Gree stumbled and accidentally touched the compartment holding the fragment. Whatever happened next, his mind just went blank. The Count quickly realized that Claire's ancient magic must have stirred up the Demon Lord's life force, making it unstable. If nothing was done, the fragment could blow up and take out the entire ship. Thinking fast, for once, he yanked it out of the engine, which stopped the explosion threat. But there was a small problem. It also killed the ship's power. With the fragment gone, the entire vessel started nose-diving out of the sky. Thanks to Lloyd's gravity magic, everyone managed to stay glued to the floor, even as the ship tilted downward. But bigger problems showed up when Gree suddenly writhed in pain. After a few moments, he stood up with blank eyes and started demanding the Demon Lord fragment. The Count, being the crazy scientist he is, thought, well, this looks fun, and tossed the fragment straight at Gree's head. Immediately, a sphere of dark energy engulfed Gree, pulling in all the nearby monsters and absorbing their life force. Inside that sphere, the Demon Lord Fry began awakening within Gree's body. Claire fell to her knees in despair as she heard the screams of dozens of monsters being drained. A few seconds later, the sphere vanished in a flash of light, revealing a grotesque abomination born from Gree and all the absorbed monsters. Lloyd recognized it instantly as a chimera, a monster with multiple lives inside one body, something he had only ever read about in Merlin's books. Claire was heartbroken to see innocent monsters reduced to such a twisted form. But the Count, he was practically giddy. This nightmare creation was even better than anything he had imagined. However, he got a little too close, and the monster slashed his body in half with a single swing. Even on the verge of death, the only thing on the Count's mind was how fascinating this creature was. He died a moment later, smiling, no less, and Lloyd and the others were baffled that anyone could check out of life looking that cheerful. But they couldn't dwell on that for long. They had a monster to deal with. Unless they came up with a solid plan, they'd end up just like the Count. Meanwhile, over in the capital, Merlin and Loon were walking through the halls. Loon asked if she planned to stay the night, but Merlin grumbled that since there was no alcohol here, she'd get depressed without her nightly drink and was planning to head to a local pub. Priorities, right? Just then, they both noticed someone by the entrance. Loon lit up, since she hadn't seen him in ages, but immediately wondered how he got past the guards. Will brushed it off, saying that was the least of their worries. He had something important to discuss. Merlin could tell this was serious. so she asked Loon if they could head back to her room to talk privately. Back on the airship, the group was about to face the Chimera. Dages stepped forward to protect everyone, with Lloyd boosting his defense. When the Chimera attacked, Dages somehow managed to block it and keep himself in one piece, but he clearly wouldn't last long at this pace. To make things worse, the ship was still nosediving, so a crash landing was inevitable. While everyone else was panicking, Lloyd looked oddly calm, like he'd already accepted the role of reluctant flight attendant. Cross suggested they abandon ship, but Claire refused to leave the creatures behind, insisting they'd been forced into becoming part of the Chimera. Theon snapped that it was already too late to save them. As they rushed for the exit, the Chimera blocked their path, trapping them inside. Losing patience, Theon conjured an ice sword, ready to slice the beast apart, but Claire stopped him. She just couldn't stand the thought of harming the innocent monsters trapped within. Everyone understood her compassion, but come on, Claire, this was literally life or death. Yui and Cross unleashed their strongest attacks, but nothing worked. With the ground rushing up fast, their chances weren't looking good at all.